Hi, I'm Ian McClintock, founder of Charity Excellence. And in this video, I will talk about why we need to think about risk in a very different way in response to the hugely uncertain world in which we live. If you go to the Charity Excellence homepage, scroll to the bottom right, you will find a video commissioned by Humentum, in which I talk about why I built Charity Excellence. And in that video, I talk about a perfect storm for the charity sector. That video was made more than a year before COVID. Did I see COVID coming? No, of course I didn't. But if you looked out into the world and you looked at the various factors and where the charity sector was, we were a car crash waiting to happen. It wasn't if, but when. You just needed to look. And when we came to the cost of living crisis, the second once in a lifetime crisis in 3 years, we predicted what was going to happen and when, and we actually got it spot on. And what we did isn't actually all that clever. It's just about a different way of looking at things. So what I'm going to do is to talk through how we do that. Like football, it's a game in two halves. The first half, I'm going to talk about tolerance and appetite. That is about how we do risk at the moment and how we can change how we do risk to risk taking. And the second half starts off with Plato's cave, and that's really about perceptions and reality, that how we perceive risk is often very wrong, and that takes us in the wrong direction. And then leading into that, black swans, those horrendous events that you can't see coming that are hugely destructive, and what they might look like for the charity sector in the future. So looking at managing risk, this is made up by me entirely. The big circle at the bottom is your annual plan. The risk plan in the top left is where we all focus. That's the risk management register. That's only part of it. Risk is like a piece of string in a three-way drain pipe. There's your risk plan, there's your budget plan, which is the money, there's the annual plan, is what you're going to do. And where we often go wrong is we will decide that we've got a shortage in the budget, so we'll call it stretch targets, we'll give that to the fundraisers, and we're all happy again. What we've effectively done is jacked up the risk in the risk plan. You might not change it, but in reality, you have jacked up the risk in your risk plan. You might not be aware of that. Or in the annual plan, we're ambitious about where we're going. Ambition's fine. Don't ever plan to fail though. And so what we're going to do is we're going to jack up our targets in the annual plan. What we're effectively doing is jacking up the risk plan again. So if you're doing that in the budget and the annual plan, you can overload your operational risk plan and you don't even know you've done it. So when you do your annual planning cycle, the risk plan, the budget plan, the annual plan, you do them all together. If you change one, you should change others to reflect that. And that's the near term, that's a year. Strategy is about long term. Frankly, 3 years is very long term nowadays. And that is the difference between tolerance and appetite. Risk tolerance is about how much risk your charity can afford to take. Safeguarding risk, financial risk, fundraising risk. Risk appetite is about how willing you are to commit time and resources to actively take risks to secure your strategy. It's longer term, it's a lot less controllable, but it is about actively pursuing risks. If you're only focused in the here and now, you're missing out on the strategy. If you focus on the strategy, you're not managing here and now. There is a balance to be sought between the two. Where we tend to be, and the data and the Charity Excellence data store absolutely underscores this, is strategy is not really a big deal for most charities. It is not something we look at. So we tend to be zeroed in on the risk plan. We tend not to be looking at the budget and the annual plan. We tend not to think about risk appetite and how we are going to deliver our strategic objectives and being able to do it. And the final element is that risk changes over time. The risks facing us in 2020 fundamentally different to the risks in 22, and they are fundamentally different to the risks in 23. So we need to look at it in a holistic way, not just there's a risk management plan, it's done, put it on the shelf till next year. Other things to think about. Always be aware that most risk management plans are downside risk. It's always about the bad things, safeguarding, the communications harms, all the rest of it. There is upside risk. Risk is uncertainty. Risk isn't bad. It's just about uncertainty. And there's the risk of something really good happening. So you can put all your funding bids in and none of them come in, and you've got that in your risk register. But actually, what happens if they all come in? It might be unlikely, but it can still happen. So when you look at your risk register, be aware you are probably not looking at a balanced view of risk. You're looking at a slightly negative view. That's not a problem as long as you understand that you're doing that. And the opportunity cost, the cost of what you don't do. And that is important, but usually you can't see it. So the charities often tend to be extremely timid. We don't make a decision, it's all right, that'll keep us safe, we'll hunker down in our foxhole. But not making decisions can bring with it, what about the decisions you could have made? And what about all the things you've lost out on because you weren't prepared to change? And often you can't see that. And that's bringing me on to risk and performance are linked. If you're not prepared to be bold, you'll achieve less. So if you climb out of that foxhole and you make some radical decisions, you're right, you may well fail. If you don't climb out of that foxhole, you will probably not succeed. And, you know, you pick the choice, but just don't understand that hunkering down in the foxhole is the best thing to do. It not necessarily. So bringing me to risk appetite. It's the amount and type of risk that an organization is willing to take in order to meet its strategic objectives. So it's not about bumping along. It's about going, there's an opportunity. We are going to throw time and money at it to deliver it. We are actively going to take a risk. In terms of charity excellence, in 2022, I was introduced to ChatGPT and I went, oh my God, that's going to change the world. Having looked at people like MIT and that, and everybody else was saying the same, I committed charity excellence very, very heavily into AI. We launched our first AI system on Christmas Day 2022. We have committed the best part of 2 years to it, and we were right. It is fundamentally going to change everything. We did go in the right direction. We could have got it wrong. It might not. And organizations have different risk appetites. It's not one size fits all. It depends on your sector. If you're in a highly regulated sector like hospices or care homes, you're actually pretty constrained in what you can do. You know, you are locked into those frameworks. There's a limit to what you can do. Also about culture. What is your board and your management team like? Me, I'm an absolute cowboy. I'm the guy that jumps off cliffs because I think it's fun. That's why I've got a board and I'm not on it. I don't trust myself. They're the sensible people. But it depends on your culture. Do you have a risk-taking attitude? And it depends on your objectives. So if you're running a hospice and you provide fabulous service to the people in the local area, and that is what you're there to do you want to take huge strategic risks? Probably not. Charity excellence was built to fundamentally change the sector forever. Well, I'm not going to fundamentally change the sector forever unless I'm prepared to take very big risks. So for my objectives, if I wish to do that, I have to take risks. So think of it that way. And a range of appetites exists for different risks. So it may be that operational risk, where you're dealing, say, with vulnerable people and individuals and patients, you really can't do that kind of thing. But lucky you've got very substantial reserves. Taking a big financial risk actually is less of an issue for you. You can afford to take that risk, whereas you can't afford to do that with your beneficiaries. So that changes. And unlike operational risk, it is much less controllable. So you're running your hospice, you've got drug controls, you've got checks, you've got balances, you recruit people of certain things. You control all of that and you can manage that risk. And if you're not happy with it, you can increase the level of control. With charity excellence launching itself out into AI, what is happening in the AI world is utterly beyond my control. I can follow it and I can respond to it, but I certainly can't influence it. So when you take strategic risk, you are betting the farm on the outside world because the outside world will do what it wants to. It's not going to do what you tell it to. So you have less control over it. So you best be really clear about what's unacceptable because it might well materialize. So it could be so unacceptable, it doesn't matter how remote the likelihood is. I'm running a hospice. If the hospice closes, there is no other provision in the local area for people. There would not be. We just can't afford to do that. That is an unacceptable risk to us. Or the probability of success is simply too low to make the payback worthwhile. We could go and do that. Yeah, it'd be fabulous. To be honest, on 2% probability of success, it ain't worth the risk. Or there's too little certainty. We can't make a reasonable assessment of the risk reward cost. If we go into this, we don't know how much it's going to cost us. We don't know how much time it's going to take. We don't know what the probability of success is. And if we do succeed, we don't actually know how successful that'll be. We can't bet on that. We're not going to do it. So that's how you think about what is and what is not unacceptable to you when you look at it. So questions to ask if you're going into this, as we did, right, going into AI. How effective are our risk management control systems? Let's make really sure they're working the way they should be. Are we very clear about what our strategic objectives are? My strategic objectives are not AI. My strategic objectives is to catalyze AI for the sector because a smaller organization can do that. It's about creating stepping stones for others to use and for others to then overtake us. Very, very clear that it's achievable. And what substantial risks are we prepared to take to achieve these? Well, I could have built all sorts of new stuff. It would have taken time, it would have taken money, it would have certainly have worked, but it just would not give us the payback of AI. AI was definitely worth the risk. And are we clear on the nature and scale of those risks? Do we actually understand the implications of what will happen if this doesn't succeed? And how much risk are we prepared to take at one time? So, give you an example of that. We aim to build an AI concierge service, a single gateway to the charity sector for everyone. And it will just send them to the people where they need to go, and that will drive all sorts of things. To do all of that is a chunk of money. It's a huge chunk of time. With a technology that's changing every time I blink. And to go from standing start to full delivery effectiveness in one go. That's a bit much. So what I'm actually doing is we have created AI systems, and one by one, we will migrate existing tech systems across the AI, and then we will consolidate the AI into a single service. It manages the risk in bite sizes. It makes more sense for us to do it that way. And brings me to Plato's cave, how we see risk. This is 380 BC. If you haven't read The Republic, it's up on screen. Well, a bit of it anyway. So prisoners are tied up in a cave and they have never seen anything else. And behind them, people are holding objects up, horses, buildings, and they're reflecting the light onto the wall. And all the prisoners can see is the shadows on the wall, horses and buildings and things like that. For them and for their reality, that is the entire world. That's the world as they understand it. And one of them escapes and he goes outside into the sunlight and he realizes that what he's been seeing on the wall is not even remotely close to reality. And he goes back in and he tries to explain this to the others who won't believe him because their whole reality is grounded in what they can see on the wall. And he's talking about things that they can't even imagine. That was the allegory of Plato's cave. He was quite a smart man. What was that all about? And it's three things, really. The first one's perception versus reality. What you think you see and what's actually there are not necessarily the same thing. Actually, they're definitely not. It's just how big a difference there is between the two. Ignorance. If you haven't explored beyond your experiences, you don't understand what's possible. So if you're sitting there running your charity and you're absolutely inward focused, and this is how we've done it, and this is how we always do it, and nothing outside there ever actually matters to us, then you will never see what else you could have done. And resistance to change. Almost inevitably, any kind of change is resisted. So there is a kind of driver there that to stay safe, we hunker down, we believe in the services we deliver, we continue to deliver the services. Everybody's really comfortable with that. But in a massively uncertain world, you could be doing entirely the wrong thing. So what is the most dangerous creature on the planet? And this is the whole perception thing. Lions, tigers, sharks. That's what we're programmed to think of. These are dangerous animals. Sharks kill 10 people a year. Cows kill 20. That's just the cows in the US, by the way. So if you walk across a field of cows, the big black and white thing in the corner going moo is actually twice as likely to kill you as a great white shark. That's the reality of it. If you've ever been up close to a cow, they're really, really big. You do not want to get stood on by one of those things. So cows are actually far more dangerous and far more likely to kill you. And if you want to know about things that really, really kill large numbers of people, human beings aside, it's mosquitoes. It is the most lethal creature on the entire planet. If we, as people, had looked at mosquitoes in that context as being 70,000 times more deadly than sharks, maybe we would have put more effort into developing vaccines and things. Maybe we would have fixed this by now. So you can see what people would innately think of as dangerous and what actually is dangerous can be quite different. So looking at it from a charity sector perspective, what I often hear, we're currently looking at AI roadkill. I have an AI roadkill toolkit if you want to find out if you're going to fail. And what we hear is our services are excellent and AI can't replicate these. We look after the pussycats or whatever we do. And my response to that is a great answer. That isn't actually the question. That's how you perceive things. The reality is, what do your beneficiaries want? And that's not the same thing. So they may say, I need services at 10 o'clock on a Friday night. I can't afford to pay for your services. I have 3 kids and no money. I can't afford the time and the cost of bringing myself and my 3 kids all the way across town in the bus fare. Or the fact that I can't get an appointment with you for 3 weeks. And you go, but we're doing the best we can. I understand that. But what I'm talking about is what beneficiaries need. And if someone else is able to deliver that, then that's what they will look at. And this is why AI is something that you need to be aware of. So here is an example for me. This is Kodak. the camera company, Wet Film. They were absolutely brilliant, dominated the market. They're also the people that brought in digital photography. And digital photography was not very good. Wet film is far, far better. Lots of artists still use it because it is actually a far, far better medium. And they went, that's how it is. But people went, do you mean with a digital camera? If I take a photograph now, I will get the picture immediately. And the answer is, well, yeah. I remember you used to take your pot to the shop and then you could go back and collect it a week later. That's how it used to be. And so if I can take it right away and it's on my phone, and I could upload that straight onto Facebook, as was. The answer is yeah. And that's what they wanted. And Kodak went bankrupt. Because, and they were brilliant. They were market leaders. They were absolutely brilliant. But what people wanted and what they did was not the same, and they went out of business. So how do we look at risk so we can see things in the round? This is Plato's Cave Unpacked. Those of you who've been on business courses may have seen this kind of thing. There is knowledge. There's all the stuff. And there is stuff that you know, and there's stuff that you don't know. But you also get what's known as known knowns. That's what you know already. Right now, you know this stuff. There is also known unknowns. And that stuff that you know you don't know it. But are you conscious of what you're not exploring? And then the stuff that's unknown. And you get unknown knowns. Are you aware of the assumptions that you're making? And unknown unknowns. Biased and unconscious decisions. And this is where things get a bit sticky. So let me unpack that and show you how to work your way around it. So a known known, you know, it's facts and information. We have X number of volunteers. We run an annual black tie event. On average, this is how much it earns. That's a known known. Known unknowns, the stuff you know that you don't know. Integral calculus is a good one. And issues you lack knowledge about. So online donations are really important, but we don't really know the best way to reach potential donors online or who they are. We don't really know how to increase engagement on social media. So these are known unknowns. Question though, are you looking at the issues that really matter? Is it about your social media engagement? Are you sure that's the stuff you need to be looking at? If the stuff that you're looking at in this area isn't the right stuff, you've got a problem. So taking AI as an example, because it's something we're doing at the moment, our AI benchmarking survey, we track 9 critical areas the charity sector needs to get right. 50% of charities rated each of them 1 out of 10, i.e. we're totally unprepared. This is a known unknown. Are they looking at it? Well, no, they're probably not. That is problematic. So the stuff that you know you don't know, which stuff amongst that is going to be really important to you? Are you sure you've got that right? And things that you don't know, unknown knowns, things you don't know that you actually know. So it's information or knowledge that you've got, but you don't actually know that you've got it. And where that can play in is things like subconscious beliefs, bias, assumptions, influencing your actions without consciously recognizing it, implicit bias, cultural assumptions, age or appearance bias. And people go, well, you know, we don't get that stuff. All right. What about diversity in the sector? Most trustees look like me, old and knackered and white. Yet we're all totally, totally, totally committed to diversity. And yes, this is a moral issue, but actually it's also a critical issue of performance. McKinsey in the US have shown that companies with diversity of thought significantly outperform other companies. And they do it for two reasons. If you've got that mix round the table, you've got innovation, you've got different ideas floating about, and you are much more aware of risk. So the fact that we are not diverse, we are paying a substantial price for that. Oxfam, the whole issue around Haiti and the abuse of those women, if they'd had a properly diverse thinking around that board, that should not have happened. So we're all totally committed to this. We're not going to do it. The fact that we haven't got young black people on our boards, they're a problem. Well, not really. We're the problem. But presumably some of us don't know it. So always be very, very careful about how you're thinking about these things. Then the unknown unknowns, things you don't know that you don't know, unexpected issues or opportunities that could arise. I came into work one day as chief executive, and there was a letter on my desk from a lawyer, £475,000 legacy. No idea who the guy was, supported us for years. He had no family. He had a house in London that he bought God knows when, and it was worth an absolute fortune. And he gave it all to us. Fantastic man. We had no idea. We'd no legacy program. We'd nothing like that. We just did not see that coming at all. That's an unknown. We just did not know that's out there. So what kind of things are out there? So these are how you look at things. And it's about pulling away misconceptions and bias and unconscious decision making to look very coldly and objectively at the real world to properly understand the risk that's facing us. So known knowns and known unknowns are in our risk register, or they should be. Unknown knowns and unknown unknowns are not in your risk register. Because if you've got bias or perception issues or implicit bias or those kind of issues, and you're deciding for some reason that you're not going to appoint diverse people to your board, and you don't know that you're doing it, then you have got a problem. And so what we need to do, there is no perfect answer to this, but being brutally objective and honest with ourselves is the way to get around these. And black swans that have caused so much havoc in recent years. Black swan is business speak. It's an event that's extremely rare, it's unpredictable, and it has severe consequences. The outcome of Brexit, COVID, the Ukraine war, all of which had a massive impact on this country. Key characteristic, it's very rare. Last influenza outbreak was early 1900s. Severe impact, and the widespread insistence, it was obvious in hindsight. It's not, but there are driving factors there. There are things that you could look into the past and say, you know what, maybe we needed to think a bit more about that. And there is widespread acceptance that the black swan events were not part of thinking at government or other levels. In the case of COVID, influenza outbreaks happen about once a century. Well, if the last one was circa 1914 and it's now 2020, do the maths. SARS outbreak, it was really contagious. It wasn't dangerous. The MERS outbreak, it was really dangerous. It wasn't contagious. The COVID outbreak was just warm enough and just right. And it went. It was there if you looked. So we didn't predict these. What does it look like? And what I did is I said, well, I'll sit down and do some black swans. I tried asking ChatGPT. It decided it wasn't going to play that game. It went, sorry, mate, can't tell you that. So I did it myself. Trump presidency, quite scary. He tanks the US economy. Global economy follows it. China and the US. If those two economies, either of those two economies go, the whole world goes. Crash the Chinese economy. Have a look at the Chinese, look at the property market. It's well dodgy. Is it going to crash? Don't know, but you know what? It could. Ukraine or Gaza, something tears it into a regional conflict with the major powers being drawn in and all hell breaks loose, or more hell breaks loose. Or China invades Taiwan, sucking the US into a regional conflict in the Pacific. An inexperienced Labour government, they've been out for years, descends into chaos of infighting and wrecks the economy and public services, even more than they've been wrecked already. Yeah. 1 in a million COVID mutation leads to a super pandemic in 2025. AI development accelerates. It is without control. There isn't a lot. AGI emerges. It's debatable. The key thinkers don't actually think this is going to happen in the immediate term. And big tech's in control, at least for a while. And all of those could have hideous consequences. Are any of these likely to happen? Almost certainly not. Could they happen? Yes. Which brings me back to my video. And in my video, I talked about a perfect storm. And I looked at things and I went, last recession, 2008, it's 2019. In the UK, you get recessions every decade. That looks like that. I looked at the headwinds. I looked at how the years of austerity had hollowed the sector out and that we were incredibly fragile. I looked at the charity sector strategy data, which was telling me that the charity sector, the charities were saying, we just don't really do strategy stuff. We're not thinking about it. And I put it all together and I said, if this kind of stuff all comes together in one go, we're well screwed. I didn't see COVID, but the car crash was there. We're looking at this. Could this come together? It could. We hope not. And hopefully none of them materialize, but the potential is there. And what might black swans look like for the charity sector? Public services devastated in winter 2024. Labour government comes under massive pressure to do something about the NHS. The Resolution Foundation says there's a £12 billion hole in the public services. If anybody's waiting for the money to come out to support stuff, you can forget it. There isn't any. And the government goes, all hell's broken loose. We just have to deal with this. And it reallocates 50% of the lottery funding to NHS and other things. It's controlled by DCMS. They could do that. That would destroy large parts of the sector. Failure to adopt AI effectively. Two major challenges. We're coming to a fork in the road, we think. We think the medium to large charities, you go down integrated AI route. We're talking custom AI approaching. We're talking about what you do with your data. And trust me, cybersecurity and data protection and data lakes and compliance and consistency and completeness are going to be vital to make this stuff work. And what we were told in our benchmarking survey is none of us is ready to do that. If you get repeated breaches and fraud and scandals and the public loses trust in us, then the fundraising goes. And with AI, the scams and the content farms and the misinformation are going to accelerate hugely. If you bring all of that together and the public loses trust, fundraising goes. Or a super large charity launches an AI fundraising systems that are so spectacularly good. Social engineering, that's what they use in the scams. And it leads to almost complete domination of online fundraising. That will never happen. Really? You sure about that? Cancer research have come out and said we need a lot more money. I wouldn't disagree. So have Marie Curie. They have very, very, very capable teams. They've got resources to invest. They are very, very good at this. AI will be potentially hugely powerful. Social engineering AI, the super large charities take 80% of the funding already. Potentially, could they create the digital moats that we've put on our risk register? And the answer is they could. And I don't know. Again, all of these things I've given to you Do I think this is what's going to happen? No, I don't. I think this is very, very unlikely, but this is what could happen. And what we need to do is to be aware of these issues and to position ourselves so that we are responding as well as we can. And until we break away those perceptions, until we start thinking about risk in a different way, we are going to struggle to be able to do that. And that's fundamentally where I'm coming from. If you want to expand on this, if you join Charity Excellence, it's free. The complete My Profile page, that will enable the system. You tell the system all about you, 2 minutes. The system will then build a completely unique set of questionnaires, one of which is risk. And it will analyze all the risk for you. It will connect you a whole series of resources and risk registers and everything like that, and people to help you. I have a guide to managing risk and a risk register on the website. I have another one on AI risk. If you are concerned about your charity and the risk to it from AI, there is an AI roadkill toolkit. So there is a whole series of things that are available. Thank you very much for listening to me. I hope you found that useful. And as for my black swan things, what I really, really hope is 2 or 3 years' time, everyone can come back and look at this video and snigger at how completely wrong I got it, and that everything turned out fantastically, and that the Labour government turned the country round, and it's now a much, much better place. That would be absolutely fabulous. Thank you.